Alrighty, well, Governor Ryan, thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Jakob Emerson. I'm a reporter with WICS here in Springfield. How are you this morning?
I'm good. It's a beautiful day today in
It is,
Kankakee.
yeah, it is a beautiful day. It feels like fall for the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Governor, your new book, Until I Could Be Sure, How I Stopped the Death Penalty in Illinois, was released last week. It's been 20 years now since you established the moratorium on capital punishment in the state, and 17 since you commuted the death sentences of 167 people. So my first question for you is, why write this book now? What motivated you to tell this story so many years later?
Well, I had really had to do a lot of research on this book, and I had a good helper in Maurice Posley. Maurice used to be a Tribune reporter, and he helped me with the death penalty situations when we were going through with it. And he and one of his partners did a whole series on the faults of the death penalty. And I worked on it and spent some time on it, threw it away, didn't do it, laid it aside for a while, and then determined that there really hadn't been a whole lot of changes made to do what I was trying to do with the death penalty, and that was to improve it to the point where there was some guarantee that an innocent person wouldn't be executed. Mm. And there were no changes made. You know, while I was going through all of this back in those days, I appointed a very good panel to examine the death penalty and to prepare some legislation or some recommendations for legislation that would make those improvements that I was interested in.
Right.
The commission came back with 85 recommendations. And the General Assembly at the time, this was an election year, of course, only passed one recommendation, and that was to videotape confessions. And that's the law today. And that's the only thing that passed out of there. The other 84 recommendations were all tabled. Wow. in due political fashion.
I see.
So I decided that maybe it was time to debate it. We still have 28 states in the United States that have the death penalty along with the federal government.
Right.
And it would be important, I think, to write this book and tell the story. And like I said, until I could be sure with some moral certainty that nobody else would be, no innocent person would be executed.
Hmm. And yet that wasn't always your perspective. Back in March 1977, you voted yes in the Illinois House of Representatives to reinstate the death penalty at the time. Do you remember what was going through your mind when you cast that yes vote?
Oh, sure. I remember it well. Now, you're talking about 1977, after the Supreme Court said the United States could go back and have a death penalty. It was 1977. I was a member of the Illinois House at the time. I'd only been there about 5 years. Mm. And it was a very kind of a sober day, the day we reinstated the death penalty, and I can recall it vividly. The vote came up, and I voted green, punched my green button to vote yes to reinstate the death penalty.
Right.
And a fellow, Bob Mann, who was a Democrat from Chicago, was an anti-death penalty guy, and got up and said, for those of you that are voting green, I want to ask you one question. How many of you would be willing to throw the switch to execute somebody? Now that thought kind of rattled through my brain as I stood there on the floor and watched the proceedings, that I didn't want to throw the switch on anybody or kill anybody, but I did believe that the death penalty was a deterrent and was a good tool for the Department of Justice to have, or whoever was doing the legal work, to have at their disposal. And so that's why I voted yes. Little did I know that some 20 years later, I'd be the fellow that had the say whether somebody threw the switch or not.
Right. And, you know, one statistics that really did stand out to me in the book, especially when you were talking about, you know, that vote that you had to make, eventually the report came out from the Capitol talking about the 13 people that had been exonerated from death row in Illinois since the reinstatement that you voted yes on, and then the 12 people that had been executed. That is a massive failure rate, and naturally leads me to the question, do you think that your yes vote in 1977 ever led to the execution of an innocent person?
Ever did what?
Ever led to the execution of an innocent person?
Well, they say that no innocent person has ever been executed. The proponents of the death penalty system will tell you that.
Do you believe that?
No, I mean, I don't know for sure, but I would guess that there are so many places for error in that whole system that I got to believe that that's not true. I'm sure that there have probably been some that have been innocent people, but I guess we'll never really know that. But I do know that there are places where that still need to be corrected. We still have jailhouse snitches that can testify to put somebody on death row and they can take their testimony. Inappropriate defense counsel that have been disbarred and they're handling these cases after they get their license back. Prosecutorial misconduct where prosecutors are looking for somebody to solve a problem and they get a little rambunctious and don't quite do what they should do. Just this week or last week, the United States Attorney General made the statement about some of the people in the FBI that are headhunters. And they want to make a name for themselves, so they do some things that maybe they shouldn't be doing. Sure. That's not all of them, but that's what he said, and it's not those aren't my words, they're his. So yeah, I can really just imagine that there has been somebody that's been executed.
Wow. Governor, you also talk about, the 28 states that do still implement the ultimate punishment. So what do you say to those governors in the other states who have seen the evidence? They have heard that a perfect capital punishment system isn't possible, but there still is no moves being made to take action like yours 20 years ago. I mean, what do you say to them?
I say, to look at your system. At the time that I was going through this, George Bush was a candidate for president, and I was his campaign manager for the state of Illinois. And I would be asked on occasion by the public, by the press, what I compared to George Bush. And George Bush always said that his system worked fine and they didn't have any problems with it. And that's why he was still for it and would be for it. And so we had a different system. I don't know whether his system was broken or not. I just know that he executed about 250 people in the 4 years he was governor.
Right.
And I'm glad he had a perfect system, but I don't believe that he did. And so I guess, it's every governor has to make their own decisions about that. And if they think their system is perfect and doing the job and there's no mistakes with it, then I think they're kind of maybe fooling themselves a little bit, but that's their decision. I knew our system was broken and needed to be fixed and still does.
Right. And then, your book also talks about how your decision helped to spur the movement for criminal justice reform in the United States. President Trump today often touts his work in reforming the criminal justice system too, but that does not include a federal abolishment of the death penalty. You're a lifelong Republican. Do you feel that your own party will ever take this up as an issue to work on at the federal level in any time soon?
Well, I know that several states have done what I've done or what I caused to have done, and that's the abolishment of the death penalty in their own states. There's still 28 states, and of course the federal government that has executions. And I would guess that it could be a generational thing. I'm an old guy and had some of the old field thoughts of the day, and was a firm supporter of the death penalty. There's a lot of young people like you that probably have different thoughts about it, and maybe time that they'll be taking the reins of government and they'll make the changes to abolish the death penalty that probably needs to be made.
Sure. Do you think that your party will ever be in the position to do that?
Well, sure. They're in the party. They're in a position most any time.
I mean, do you think they will ever take up a policy position to abolish the death penalty?
I don't know. I hate to forecast it, but sure. Yeah, I think maybe they might. Like I said, they get enough young people there and people that are interested in this kind of things.
Okay. And my last question for you, Governor, you are often grouped with Governors Blagojevich, Walker, and Kerner for the state leaders that served prison time for crimes committed in office. in your own words, how would you define your legacy? And is this book part of the overarching theme of how you would like to be remembered as the champion of abolishing the death penalty in Illinois?
Well, I think that's one of the things. I don't know if I'd like to be remembered by it. I did what I thought was right at the time, and I'm not too interested in my legacy. I'm 86 years old now, so I'll just continue to do what I'm doing and hope everything works out all right.
Right. Actually, Governor, I do have one last question for you. Another point in your book, and it's something that I think it went into your decision making at the time. The man that was exonerated due to the work of the Northwestern journalism students. And one of the points you make is that the death penalty is often disproportionately applied to Black and low-income Americans. So I guess in our current day of racial tension and protests that we see now, are your views being shaped even today by current events?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Sure.
The case you're talking about was Anthony Porter.
Exactly. Yes.
That was what got me started down this path.
Right.
Totally down this path. As my wife and I sat one night as I was governor in the mansion watching the news come out of Chicago that this little African American fella comes out with smiles on his face. He'd only been in prison for 16 years on death row. And they decided, the officials, that he was innocent. As a matter of fact, it was the journalism students. It wasn't the system that got him out of jail.
Right.
They hired an investigator and proceeded to find the guilty man and got a taped confession from him. And that's how I said to my wife, how does that happen in America? How do they put somebody on death row for 16 years and leave him there and let him wonder every morning when he wakes up whether he's going to be executed or not? How does that happen in America? And that's what really triggered my whole process to start to move down the path that I took.
Wonderful. Governor Ryan, is there anything else you would like to add?
No, I appreciate the time to be with you here this morning.
And we thank you for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Have a good rest of your day.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.